Chippewa Lake, a sprawling 325-acre lake surrounded by lush landscape dotted with quaint lakefront homes. It's one of the largest natural lakes in Ohio, attracting visitors year-round to boat, to swim, to hike. The deep blue waters are beautiful and peaceful, but those waters hold a deep, dark secret of what happened to Bryon Macron.
I just was like a panic mess. This would not be my husband not to come home, ever. Like, where is he?
It was December 16th, 2016. Victoria Macron was frantic. Where was her husband? A township trustee, a father to 3 young girls, just gone.
He was supposed to meet somebody at the town hall, and it was supposed to be this angry resident.
Inside the town hall, blood on the walls, in the bathroom, a chair flipped over. 4 miles away, Bryon's black Chevy SUV is parked in the cold at Chippewa Lake. His blood on the driver's seat, the steering wheel, but the 45-year-old was nowhere to be found.
My red flags went up right away. Like, what is going on?
To investigators, the scene looked staged. Some even thought maybe Bryon just skipped town.
Some people were leaning towards he ran off, and I'm like, we need to follow the evidence. We need to continue to keep an open mind.
2 months later, the discovery. Bryon had not run off.
Saw a little bump in the water up ahead.
A kayaker found his body bobbing, head and shoulders exposed in that icy lake.
It looked like a doll's head.
But then, the mystery surrounding Bryon's death becomes even more puzzling.
When the autopsy was performed, there was no water in his lungs, and there was no debris in his airways. So he, from what they've told me, would have been deceased before he entered the water. That's why I think he was put there after.
To this day, no one has been able to determine how Bryon Macron died.
I'm the coroner. I speak for the dead. I am their representative. And I can only tell the story from what they give me. The clues they leave, and usually that's on the body. And Mr. Macron left us no clues.
But were clues missed?
I remember a hoodie being up over his head.
A jogger who saw someone suspicious near Chippewa Lake the morning Bryon disappeared.
And that's when I saw a gentleman walking on the other side of the street. The gentleman was not thin. I could not tell you how tall he was.
Her name got lost in some paperwork, according to this special agent.
You have a vital piece of information that was overlooked, unfortunately.
Oh, geez.
What about an unidentified car spotted in surveillance video at the town hall?
Who was that? I can't give her an answer. It's a good question, right? But we couldn't give an answer.
And was something tied to Bryon's body, weighing him down when he was found in Chippewa Lake? And if so, how could that have been missed?
I think that's the questions we want to look at. Figure out more information from that team that was out there. My question is, if that was the case, why that wasn't shared in 2017?
Nearly 7 years later, a new sheriff at the helm asking new questions about what happened to Bryon Macron, and a wife who is not backing down.
We deserve answers as a family. But he deserves justice to be served, and that's where we have to go with this. That's why I've pushed so hard.
In this podcast, Victoria Macron reveals new information on her husband's death. We go inside the case files. We speak with the current sheriff, with a captain who actively worked this case, with the coroner, and with the store clerk who remembers the morning Bryon went missing. It was the day detectives came calling.
There were so many people asking for video.
Surveillance video from his market points right at the town hall where Bryon was last seen. And the clerk says investigators did not want at least one person in particular to see it.
One of the FBI guys, he was like, don't give any information to that guy. Don't let him see nothing, don't tell him nothing or anything like that.
Who is that guy? What was in the video? Are we any closer to finding answers in the mystery around Bryon Macron's death? I'm Nichole Vrsansky, and this is Dark Side of the Land.
Everybody loved Bryon. Like, you talk to Bryon, everybody says, I mean, they write me to this day, even on the anniversary, and they say, he would light up a room. He had the greatest personality. He was so fair.
Victoria and Bryon Macron met as high school seniors on spring break in Daytona Beach, Florida. Victoria says it was love at first sight.
He was always fun to be around.
They got married in 1993 and at first lived apart for much of the time because of Bryon's service in the U.S. Marine Corps, assigned to a FAST unit, Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team in Norfolk, Virginia. The Macrons had 3 daughters. In 2005, they eventually settled down in Medina County. Population of about 180,000, it still has a rural feel. A quaint town square with shops and restaurants. The courthouse and city buildings are there too, and it keeps it bustling. Bryon was in jewelry sales. He worked from home but traveled occasionally. They liked the school district for the girls, and they loved the small hometown feel.
We did everything together. All the time. Our family, we brought our kids everywhere.
And the Macrons wanted to be involved in their community. So when Bryon noticed an ad in the paper for a Lafayette Township trustee opening, he applied.
He's not a political person by any means whatsoever, but he said, it's not a bad thing. He goes, this is a township in which we live. Like, why wouldn't I want to know what's going on with our tax money and, how things are run and so it wasn't so much a political thing at all by any means. It was just, I just want to be involved.
But like small town politics go, there are hot button issues that fire up debate and perhaps ignite tempers.
I knew he was getting phone calls from odd people. He said somebody possibly in the township that was upset with the fire levy that was just passed or in the process of being put on the ballot, hopefully to be passed.
The protective husband he was and not wanting Victoria to worry, Bryon kept those heated conversations to himself.
He wouldn't want to tell me to make me nervous or upset. Bryon would think that he could handle it on his own. So that's why he didn't tell me. So if he felt the need to meet with this person, like I said, he wouldn't tell me. He just would do it.
The morning Bryon went missing, he had reportedly set up a face-to-face meeting with that unknown, angry resident. For the past month, that person, Bryon said, had been calling him, irate about the fire levy. So irate, he was allegedly threatening Bryon's life. Bryon told the township office secretary the meeting would be at 8 a.m. December 16th at the town hall. Worried for her safety, Bryon told the secretary, don't come in until 9 a.m., an hour late, just in case anything got out of hand. Now, Bryon was not a small guy. He was 5'11", 250 pounds, but he still wanted some protection. So he told the secretary he arranged for an armed sheriff's deputy to be at the meeting. Hiding out at the town hall, Deputy James Sanford, Bryon's friend. The two did ride-alongs together in Sanford's squad car. Bryon's fellow township trustee, Mike Costello, was also told to be there at 8 a.m. as a backup of sorts. So the plan was in place for the morning of the 16th and the meeting. In the meantime, there was a township Christmas party to attend. Bryon went with fellow trustees and other township workers. Victoria, unfortunately, couldn't make it. She had to stay home with their daughter. But the big talk of the night? The new Star Wars movie, just out in theaters. Bryon and Trustee Costello headed out after the party for the 10 p.m. showing. Victoria remembers Bryon got home just after midnight and absolutely nothing she said seemed out of the ordinary. In fact, she says it was the most normal of nights. She was in the kitchen, getting ready to make chicken for her 5th grade daughter's lunch the next day, and Bryon just jumped right in.
He says, well, let's cook it and then we'll go up to bed or whatever. So I cooked it. They were just tenders, so they didn't take very long. And then he's like, oh, shoot, the elf. So we did the little elf on the shelf for my daughter, and I had to hide it and everything, and did the elf on the shelf. We went up to bed.
Mm-hmm.
It was 1 shortly after, and I remember kissing each other goodnight. I love you, goodnight. And that was kind of it. I remember seeing like a light go off on his phone, like once it sends the message, it lights up your screen. I remember kind of like turning over. I saw it, and then I saw him get up. If he had like an early morning meeting or a flight to catch, he would go down, he would get dressed downstairs, or he would go on the couch and lay in the basement. So when the alarm went off, he wouldn't wake all of us up. I never ever saw him leave the house. I don't know what time he left.
Victoria does know, however, that Bryon was already gone by the time she left for work at 7:40 on the morning of December 16th. Victoria got to work around 8, and within 5 minutes, her oldest daughter was calling her from home asking, "Where's Dad?"
And said the sheriff deputy was here. They don't know where Dad is. And I said, what are you talking about? And I called his phone right away. It went right to voicemail. And that was it.
Victoria's stomach dropped. She was shaking. A coworker offered to drive her home because Victoria was visibly frazzled. As they drove past the middle school, Victoria yelled, "Stop!"
My middle daughter was having breakfast on the square before she was going into her finals class before the Christmas break. So I remembered my daughter was there, and I said, wait a minute, we have to stop. I have to run in and get my daughter. So she pulled aside. I ran in, told my daughter. She's frantic. We're in the car. We finally get home. There's people in my house. I'm not even here yet. They're with my daughter. I'm like, what is going on? They went to the town hall, and there was, they found a scene at the town hall, and they were now looking for Bryon.
Inside the town hall, there was blood smeared on the conference room walls, a large circle of blood on the floor, a chair knocked over, bloody footprints leading down a hall and out the door into the freezing cold of that December day. No sign of Bryon. His phone still on the reception desk, the screen open to his calendar, reading, "Meeting with angry resident."
It's like you're living outside of yourself. Like, what? I can't even describe it. It's like
surreal.
Yeah.
According to the investigative report, the Lafayette maintenance supervisor discovered the scene and placed the first call for help around 7:30 a.m. And Victoria says that call seemed odd.
When the maintenance guy called to say that there's a scene at the town hall, he didn't call 911. He called the other trustee. And he came up and did a whole walkthrough of the entire town hall and brought his gun and walked around and did a total sweep of the scene. And then they decided that they're going to call the non-emergency number at the sheriff's department, and they put him in touch with the deputy that my husband used to ride with, and said, oh, there's something going on at the town hall. Can you come up here? After they've all walked through it, I'm going to tell you what, you can bet your ass I'm going to call 911. So that right there is bizarre too.
The report says the maintenance supervisor called Trustee Costello and Deputy Sanford, the two people Bryon said he had arranged to be at the town hall for that contentious meeting. Costello confirmed in the report that he was aware of that meetup plan for the angry resident at the town hall. But Deputy Sanford, in that same report, said he knew nothing about the meeting or the plan for him to be there as backup. He passed a voice stress test, verifying that. When Sanford got to the scene, he reported that Trustee Costello and other township personnel were there already. The BCI report says he tried to get people out to keep evidence from being contaminated. For Victoria, back at her home, the questions, the tension, the panic was building.
All these people were here, and then they tried to like interview me with like 30 people in my home. I'm like, they're pulling me aside in a room, in my morning room and they're like, you know, what's going on with Bryon? Were you guys in an argument? I said, no. I said, I mean, anybody has arguments. Is this over an argument? No, we never had an argument. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, you know what? I said, I don't feel right here. I said, something isn't right.
A few hours later, Bryon's 2011 black Chevy Equinox was found 4 miles from the town hall in a parking lot near a beach area at Chippewa Lake. It was freshly washed, almost glowing, on the salt-stained, snow-lined blacktop. Inside, there was blood on the driver's seat, the steering wheel, the car keys resting in the middle console. Still, no sign of Bryon. Detectives and deputies now widened their search efforts to the sprawling Chippewa Lake. But the brutal cold, the harsh howling wind was no help. Ohio State Highway Patrol was called in to put a plane up, but found nothing. And then, as quickly as that search started, Victoria says within a few days, it seemed to be called off and abandoned.
My husband was a veteran from the Marine Corps, and a gentleman contacted me and said, we're a veteran search and rescue group. We're certified by the state. We have police dogs. We have cadaver dogs. We have boats. We have all the equipment. We have drones. He said, listen, we've tried calling the sheriff's department 3 times. We told them we're coming up. We'll be there New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. We have the grid already mapped out of the whole area. We've already done the research. It all included Chippewa and the surrounding areas of the town hall and everything. They said we have it all mapped out, and the detective told us, do not come up here. You're not welcome.
The local fire department offered to help even with drones, but Victoria says they too were turned down. So why would investigators not be using every resource to search for Bryon? After all, this was a local township trustee, one who rode along and was friends with these deputies.
It may have gotten a little tunnel vision.
Captain Kevin Ross was one of the lead detectives at the time of Bryon's disappearance. He was off duty, moving his son to Dallas, Texas, as all of this went down. He missed the first 6 days of the investigation.
When I got back, that was mentioned that he might be on a beach somewhere, out of the country. So I kind of squashed that and told everybody to continue to, follow the evidence.
So part of an investigative team leaning heavily on a theory that Bryon just took off. Some even offered that very idea to Victoria.
Oh, well, we believe that he may have ran away. I go, ran away? Where?
Crime scene reports show investigators early on believed that town hall scene was staged.
Just inside the conference room, it wasn't a big room. There were a couple tables put together. There were some water bottles. One water bottle was sitting on one table upright, and then there was a water bottle on the floor underneath the other table, and the chair was tipped over. And they're indicating that the tables weren't moved, and if there was some type of altercation that would have taken place, because there was a report of an angry citizen that was going to meet with Mr. Macron that morning, and if there was some type of altercation, things would have been more disturbed within that conference room that this incident took place.
An independent crime scene expert also believed the scene was staged, but by who?
Do you think there was, back then, an idea that, he just took off, and then maybe the case wasn't taken as seriously as perhaps it should have been?
No, I think like I say, I squashed that and made sure that we were doing all that we possibly could do to figure out what.
But you didn't get here until that Wednesday.
Right,
so.
but I think that, there's nothing I could have, I did talk to the guys, while I was out of town, and had a lot of conversations with every one of the detectives, and I don't think, there was an indication that we need to continue to, keep an open mind and look at all the evidence.
Christmas, New Year's came and went, and still no sign of Bryon. The waiting, the wondering, the worry for Victoria kept her up most nights.
What if he comes walking down the street? What if he's injured, or what if he needs help, or what if somebody drops him off? I don't know. You don't know what to think.
I'm Nichole Vrsansky, and this is Dark Side of the Land. February 21st, 2017, 2 months after Bryon Macron disappeared. It was one of those oddly warm winter days, temperatures in the 70s, when a kayaker found Bryon's body in Chippewa Lake.
Saw a little bump in the water up ahead. Thought I'd head over and see if it was a log or something. I got closer and I thought it looked like a doll's head or maybe a mannequin. I got up next to it and I reached down in the water and I picked up his eyelid. And that's when I realized it wasn't a mannequin.
Victoria got the call at work from one of Bryon's fellow trustees. She told Victoria there was a lot of police activity down by Chippewa Lake. Then she asked Victoria, would you like a sheriff's vehicle to come pick you up at work, to bring you to the lake? Victoria said yes.
And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And finally I said, you know what? This is my husband. This is my life. I'm going to take charge of it now. And I got in my car and I turned my hazards on and I started beeping my horn and flashing my lights. And I'm telling you, I think everybody in this town knew that they were like moving aside and just motioning me to go. I drove down to Chippewa Lake. I got down there and I got out and I started running.
But Victoria was quickly stopped by investigators and told she was not permitted to go any further. In those moments, her worst fear was being realized. Bryon was never coming home.
I was in my car. A fellow friend of my husband's came over. He was consoling me. I got in the back seat of the car because I could just nobody could see me. The windows were dark. I was at that point, I just was like, oh my God, what is going on here?
Medina County Coroner Dr. Lisa Duranick remembers getting the call as well, but her call came from the Sheriff's Department. She was just getting ready to play a tennis match, and quickly she canceled those plans upon hearing the words.
They said, we have a dead male in the water, and we're thinking it could be Mr. Macron. And I said, well, let's go. And so I went out.
So you needed to take a boat to the location where he was. It wasn't like he was offshore.
No, he was in the middle of Chippewa Lake. There was a male who was floating. He was very well preserved. You could, from what I remember of his pictures, now a little backtracking, I was coroner, a brand new coroner for only 2 months. That was right after the presidential election. So 2017, I took the coronership. So I remember seeing the pictures of him. So very, very easy to recognize.
So you knew it was him?
I knew immediately that it was Mr. Macron, yes.
The coroner's report noted a large amount of mud on the front and left side of Bryon's face, mud on the front of his clothes, making it seem like he had been lying in a face-down position. His sweater sleeves were pulled over his hands, investigators noting like what someone would do if they got cold.
I can't tell you how long he was in the water, but I don't think it was too long, because usually when you have a body in the water for a long period of time, it gets very bloated and distorted, and his facial identifying him was very easy to see. There were some lacerations or cuts on his body that we saw. And at that time, we did not know if that was the cause of death. We then sent him immediately to Cuyahoga County for an autopsy.
All autopsies for Medina County are done in Cuyahoga County as routine. This was nothing different.
Were you present at the autopsy?
I was planning on going, but once again, my job precluded me. I had another death, I couldn't go, but we had our police force and the sheriff's department go.
The autopsy revealed Bryon had 6 cut wounds, ranging from his neck to his left shoulder and both forearms.
It seems like the most significant one was the one maybe by his neck.
Correct. It appeared to be self-inflicted, just from the angle, how it started off superficially and then went deep. It was a smooth blade, it wasn't jagged. I don't know if it was a hunting knife or a kitchen knife, I don't know, but it was a smooth edge knife. And that being so close to the neck and all these vital structures, he did not hit one vital structure.
Is it possible though that someone else could have stabbed him those 6 times?
Anything is possible, but from the way the evidence was shown, very unlikely. But I can't rule it out. You look for clues, and if you feel someone else was the aggressor, you would look for defense wounds on the hands and bruising, and there were none.
Have you ever seen someone who was stabbed but didn't have defense wounds?
We did have one that was just stabbed in the back, but also that was unexpected. But usually if you're facing your aggressor or you know someone is attacking you, usually you're fighting. And Mr. Macron, once again, was in armed forces, so I'm sure he knew how to fight.
Could he have been choked?
They did the autopsy and retracted skin and looked for muscle bruising, and there was nothing.
There was also nothing to show signs of drowning, according to Dr. Duranick. No fluid in Bryon's lungs after being found in Chippewa Lake, which was incredibly puzzling.
It was. We don't feel he drowned.
So how would his body have gotten in the water?
That's one of the mysteries we don't know.
One of the theories investigators have is that Mr. Macron cut himself, staged the scene at the town hall, drove down to Chippewa Lake, walked along the brush bordering the lake, perhaps passed out from blood loss, and ultimately froze to death. The December day Bryon disappeared was the coldest on record for that month. Parts of the lake were even frozen. So if Bryon passed out near a frozen portion of the lake, when it thawed, could his body have been pulled into the waters? Dr. Duranick says there's just not enough evidence to say conclusively that happened or that Bryon even died from hypothermia.
I'm the coroner. I speak for the dead. I am their representative. And I can only tell the story from what they give me. The clues they leave, and usually that's on the body. And Mr. Macron left us no clues.
Bryon's cause of death was ruled undetermined.
It's very rare, usually especially after we get an autopsy. I would say in my 7 years as coroner, I think I've written undetermined or ruled undetermined twice.
Do you ever go back and look and think, well, you know what, I'm gonna take a fresh look at this. Maybe there's something there that I didn't see. Do you ever do that?
We did, because this case has never completely, it resurfaces every couple years. So, you know, the police we come together and, you know, the prosecutor was involved. And so we all look at everything and look at it, and, you know, that's why we had BCI. And these are this is the FBI. These are the experts. And that's why we gave them the case and say, please look at this with fresh eyes. What are we missing?
BCI, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, was formally asked to take a look at the case by the Medina County prosecutor in 2018, a year after Bryon's body was found and as the sheriff's investigation was coming to a close. Captain Ross says at that point, the sheriff's investigation was not showing any evidence of another person being involved in Bryon's death.
There was blood in the conference room, but then also Mr. Macron's blood was located in there's a bathroom there. Yes, the bathroom sink. That sink was swabbed by BCI. There was no other DNA in that bathroom sink. There were bloody footprints that were leaving the building and walking out that BCI also photographed. And it was only one set that we had a tread on. We didn't know whose shoe print it was, but when Mr. Macron was found, it matched his shoe print.
But as you're about to hear, there are 2 DNA samples that investigators collected at the town hall. To this day, they have not been accounted for. One belongs to a man, the other to a woman.
BCI did all the DNA analysis there throughout that building, and no other DNA was located.
So there was no other DNA located in the town hall?
Blood DNA, no.
Is there DNA that was located that you have not been able to account for?
Yes. We had a male DNA, and I can't tell you where at in the admin building. It was not blood. And we did DNA standards for all the males that worked in the admin building. We got a hold of people that came there to do, like, there was a guy that did pest control on the admin building. We did a standard on him. Multiple males that we did standards on. We have not come up with, who that DNA belongs to.
Investigators also discovered a bloody rag in the dumpster behind the town hall. The township's fire station is right next to the town hall. They share a parking lot and that same dumpster.
In one of the garbage bags that came from the fire department, there was a bloody rag that we collected, and it came back to a female DNA. So we got a hold of all the fire department. We did DNA standards on all the female fire department employees, all the females that worked at Lafayette Township. We got a hold of the EMS squad calls within that time frame, and anybody that was a female that the squad may have responded to their house or transported them somewhere to the hospital. We did DNA standards on those females, and nothing has come back matching the female DNA that we have found in the dumpster.
Despite all that, investigators still maintain there is no evidence to indicate anyone else was involved.
There has been no indication, whether it be through scientific DNA or other things, that there was anybody else in that administration building the night that he went missing, or early morning that he went missing. And then when the vehicle was found, that was processed also, and there was no other indication of anyone else being in that vehicle that morning.
So then I guess the other $1 million question, how did he get into the lake?
I wish I had an answer for you.
The BCI report says specifically, the delay in the discovery of Bryon's body compounded their investigation and ultimately their ability to get answers, adding that, quote, a continuous and ongoing effort should have been conducted in the search of the Chippewa Lake area until there was no doubt Macron was not there. Do you think his body would have been found sooner had they allowed another party to help with the search effort?
I don't know, found in Chippewa. I don't believe so, because when my husband was found, according to the records and the autopsies and that, he had no predatory damage from any outside wildlife or anything of that nature. And I would believe if you were in a lake that long or out in the elements, you would have some sort of damage. But I mean, I don't know. But I know he did not have any. That's why I don't know. I think he was placed in the lake.
Do you think someone killed your husband?
I do. I believe my husband knew something.
If someone else did this and he didn't do this, who would it have been? Was there someone mad at him?
Not that we're aware of. I mean, like I said, we followed up on all the leads that were coming in throughout, I think we were getting them into for a couple months. A lot of information was coming in. We were following up on everything. We did not find out of anybody that was upset with him.
Not even, Captain Ross says, solid evidence of that angry resident.
Who's the angry resident?
We were in a different meeting, was that this year?
No, last year.
And an individual that organized that meeting declared in that meeting to the prosecutor, well, I was the angry resident. Now, we took that cell number that individual had and ran it through all of the cell phone records that we had collected, and that phone number never showed up. So I don't know if that person just said that as in, I don't know why you would say that, but someone did declare that, but we have not been able to prove that those cell phones ever connected.
BCI's report would also eventually conclude there was not enough evidence to show someone else was involved in Bryon's death. And so, in October 2020, the Medina County prosecutor closed the case. To Victoria, it felt like a big smack in the face.
That's how this whole investigation went. The blind leading the blind, nobody knew what they were doing, and that's why I'm questioning authority. I'm questioning them.
I'm Nichole Vrsansky, and this is Dark Side of the Land. For 3 years now, Victoria Macron has been dissecting case files, searching for new clues, longing for answers about what happened to her husband. And she has come up with new questions.
When his car was down at Chippewa Lake, there was a jogger that jogs routinely down there. She's a resident there. And she said that morning she saw someone walking away from the area.
Was that someone walking Bryon? Was it someone else? The jogger who saw this mysterious person was interviewed by Medina County detectives shortly after Bryon went missing. However, when BCI was called in to investigate, her information was somehow misplaced.
To be completely honest with you, I just found out about you this past week.
Fast forward 3 years, and what you're hearing is a BCI special agent interviewing that jogger in September 2020.
I had gone out to jog at my normal time. It was 6:30. It was dark. That's why I stay in town. And it was cold that day. So I remember dressing for the weather. It was probably like 17 degrees or whatever that day. Start running north, and I go up to like Chippewa Road, and then I'll turn around and come back. When I came back, that's when I saw a gentleman walking on the other side of the street. And I said, good morning. Didn't know him. And two things kind of went through my mind. Number one, he must not be a morning person because he didn't say anything. And number two, for as cold as it is, he sure wasn't dressed very well or very, appropriately. He had, a hoodie up over his head. This has been a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember a hoodie being up over his head. I do remember that.
How about a physical description? Could you tell how tall he was, or was he thin, heavy, anything in between?
He was not thin. The gentleman was not thin. Okay. I could not tell you how tall he was. Okay. It's been a while.
Yeah. There was kind of a glitch in their paperwork that was given to me. I never was given Your name didn't appear in the original paperwork that they gave me.
A possible eyewitness lost in paperwork, being asked for specific details with a now foggy memory.
And the information that you have is very vital to the investigation. If do you think, did you ever tell anybody, or do you feel that was Bryon Macron that you saw? Did you ever see any pictures of Bryon Macron?
Well, after his picture was like plastered all over the papers, I could say yes, but I don't know because it was dark.
Did he appear to have any, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say drunk, but I don't think he was drunk, but did he appear that he had any kind of injury or ailment? Was he walking slow? Was he walking fast? Could you tell me that?
He was walking at a slower pace, and I'm not a very fast jogger. In fact, what's weird is I thought I would be turning around and probably passing him again, coming up from behind, and I never did. I never saw the gentleman ever again. Okay, is this case still open? Is that the deal?
It's still open. I've been instructed to start wrapping it down because it's going nowhere. But you have probably one of the biggest pieces of information.
Victoria believes there was pressure from Medina County authorities to hurry that BCI agent along.
He was still investigating. It was still an open case. And Forrest Thompson actually told me in a meeting when I met, he said he was hurrying up Charlie to close the case. And I'm like, why were you hurrying him up? He just said, I was hurrying him up to close the case. And October 22nd is when he closed it.
As Forrest Thompson, the Medina County prosecutor, would not do a recorded interview for this podcast or an on-camera interview for TV. He would only provide written responses to my submitted questions. Here is his answer when I asked, was there a rush on your behalf to close this case? Quote, I didn't rush, in quotations, to close the case since there was no case, in quotations, open in my office. I kept in contact with the SO, Sheriff's Office, which was where it was being investigated, and later BCI. When they made their conclusions based on the physical and forensic evidence, I released their report as I promised Mrs. Macron I would do. Victoria believes there were too many unanswered questions to close the case. For example, from that jogger. The jogger remembered a very specific but interesting detail about the vehicle the man was walking away from near the Chippewa Lake Beach.
Could you tell what color the car was?
It was dark, it was on her street. The color of the car was dark. This was not black, though. When I got up on it, it was clearly different, but it was a dark color.
Bryon Macron's SUV was black. And as for the dark hoodie the jogger says the man she saw was wearing, Victoria says Bryon didn't own one.
I remember the deputy asking me very early on in the case, does Bryon own any hoodies? I said, no. I said, my husband has never owned a hoodie. And I was like, at each time they would ask me about that, I would get anxious, oh my God, did they maybe see him? You're hopeful, you're hoping maybe they saw him somewhere or somebody located him on camera or something. But then when I find the records, when the case is closed and they start revealing some of this information in the records, it was because she had spotted someone in a hoodie.
And Victoria says if it was Bryon in a hoodie by Chippewa Lake, what happened to it? According to the coroner's report, when Bryon was found, he was wearing a long-sleeve sweater over a button-down long-sleeve dress shirt and an undershirt. Victoria hasn't found an answer to that question. Victoria has also combed through surveillance video, frame by frame. The morning Bryon went missing, an unidentified car is spotted turning into the Town Hall Drive around 6:19 a.m. It was still dark out, and Bryon would have still been at the town hall. The driver stops for about 5 minutes at the top of the drive, then turns around and leaves. Who was that? There's no answer either. But Captain Ross describes it in further detail.
You could see it pull in, and I believe it sits up near the roadway, but you can't see. It's a grainy.
Have you located that vehicle ever?
No, we do not.
Do you know what kind of vehicle it was?
No. I mean, like I say, the video is grainy. We can just see, vehicles pull in there and then also pull out.
Is there a new technology that can hone in on that vehicle any better?
I guess, we've dealt with NASA on a lot of cases with NASA's technology. We couldn't get a license plate off the vehicle. We could just get a make maybe, or nothing that would indicate a type of vehicle. It goes by the resolution and the capabilities of the camera that would help us out.
The camera that captured that vehicle activity at the town hall is from the Lafayette Market. It's a mini-mart attached to a gas station right across the street from the town hall with a clear shot to that driveway. We went looking for answers there and met Joe Rocca. He's been the manager at the market for 9 years. He too remembers the day Bryon Macron went missing. His friend told him about the bloody scene at the town hall.
And I was like, oh my God, I said, I live right across the street from there, So I was nervous.
Joe says at work that day, as customers came in and out of the store, Bryon Macron was all anyone was talking about. And when detectives came calling about cameras mounted around the store, Joe wanted to help in any way he could.
Sheriff showed up. FBI came in here asking questions, wanting camera footage about if they had anything to where they could see, like maybe somebody was going in at that time in a vehicle, coming out or that. I gave him everything that I had on it,
What were you seeing in that video?
In the video, I was seeing the FBI pretty much and the police were both worried about like vehicles coming and going at the time that they thought it would happen, There were so many people asking for video. At one time, one of the FBI guys that I gave some video to, showed him, came back in and asked me, was there another gentleman that was here? And I said, yeah, older guy came in and was asking the same questions that you were asking. And he was like, don't give any information to that guy.
Don't give him the video?
Don't let him see nothing. Don't tell him nothing or anything like that. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say.
Why?
I'm not sure. I think that he thought maybe that guy was not who he was saying he was, that he was an investigator. I think he was like a private investigator or something. And maybe he was trying to go over their head.
To this day, Joe doesn't know who that guy was. I asked Captain Ross if he could provide any insight.
Well, it sounds like, when this happened, there were a lot of people in and out of that store asking to see that video. Is there any chance that anyone got a hold of that first and changed anything?
No, I mean, we knew about the video. We've dealt with the Lafayette Market, that used to be our jurisdiction, and we handled a lot of cases down there. We knew they had video. That was something that we got almost immediately.
Captain Ross says there was other video evidence too they collected as they tracked Bryon's car that December morning.
We have video from him leaving the township building. We have video of him down on a couple of side streets in Chippewa Lake. And
from that mini-mart across the way?
Mini-mart, there was a mini-mart there, but there was also a local bar called the Village Inn. They had some video. We had a house that was down on Beachside that we got some video from. We did see the car. We did see a jogger run by.
Captain Ross and the current Medina County Sheriff Terry Grice sat down with me for an hour-long candid conversation about the investigation, and more specifically about the questions Victoria has surrounding her husband's death.
When a family loses a loved one, there's 3 daughters, a wife, and we can't specifically say for 100% certainty anything, I think that's hard for anyone to accept. So I think we understand that. On behalf of the Sheriff's Office, I understand why there's questions. I would love to be able to go back and do things differently 7 years ago. We realized you can't do that.
Grice has been the Medina County Sheriff since 2021. Before that, he worked for a neighboring department. And like many small towns go, he knew the Macrons. He's been well aware of the case since the day Bryon disappeared.
Bryon and Victoria watched our kids. So I've always let people know that, it's no secret. That same day, though, I did ask the sheriff if I could go over and just be with the family. So I did that. I sat with Victoria and then the rest of the family, probably for a few hours.
And on that very day when Bryon went missing, Grice says he offered the services of his department to the Medina County Sheriff to help, but was turned down.
Were there departments, was the fire department, stopped from searching? Were there other, search and rescue groups, specialized in searching, that kind of thing? Were they kind of pushed away?
Other resources were offered. I think at that time, Sheriff Miller and his team, and again, I know he cares about this case. I'm sure he wishes they would have done things differently. Probably in hindsight, we could have done a better job on that day, utilizing other resources and other volunteer groups.
Just this past August, Sheriff Grice met with Victoria, and after years of silence, he has now reopened the dialogue about her husband's death.
Was the line of communication always open with Ms. Macron, or is that something more recently that has changed?
I think that's something more recently that's changed.
Are there things that Mrs. Macron brought to you that raised a red flag for you?
They raised questions for me. When I say questions enough that I said, we need to find the answer, because I understand why that would be a question for someone else. So that's why we're looking into it.
One very specific question the Medina County Sheriff's Office is actively investigating right now: was there something tied to Bryon's body? Was there something weighing him down when he was pulled from the lake?
I think that's the questions we want to look at. Figure out more information from that team that was out there. My question is, if that was the case, why that wasn't shared in 2017.
The information Victoria provided to the sheriff reveals conflicting reports. Captain Ross is now tasked with finding answers.
We have to meet with some first responders that were there when he was recovered at the lake.
What if you find out he was attached to something?
I would then question all the people that were down there that recovered the body, because that was never mentioned to us.
Is there a chance that this case could be reopened?
Absolutely.
And that, to Victoria, is like a giant exhale, a huge step forward in what she has been fighting for all along.
I fight for him. I fight for him. We had a love like no other.
A wife, unable to mourn, unable to find closure with the mystery surrounding her husband's death. Victoria says simply, she feels stuck. But she will continue to fight to have her voice and her questions heard as the sheriff and his captain work to make things right.
I mean, our ultimate goal getting into law enforcement is to help people and solve crimes. And with Mrs. Macron, you can't take all the pain away, but it falls on my shoulders. I was in charge of the Bureau at the time, and it should have been my responsibility to make sure that we were able to find out what happened to Mr. Macron.
I don't know if we'll ever be able to remove all that pain, because they lost a husband and a father, but we're going to try to do everything we can in our ability, right? Even with new technology, but there still are limitations based on the time. But we're going to do everything we can, because that's what that family deserves.
We're his family. He deserves that right. He deserves, we deserve answers as a family. But he deserves justice to be served, and that's where we have to go with this. That's why I pushed so hard.
What happened to Bryon Macron? Could a fresh look at the evidence bring new answers to the surface? I'm Nichole Vrsansky, and this is Dark Side of the Land.
Subscribe now for future episodes and find more Dark Side of the Land and photo galleries related to these cases at cleveland19.com.